Combining the brutality of the chainaxe and the swiftness of the chainsword, Khorne Berzerkers are easily the most iconic unit available to Chaos Space Marine players. They've got big hats and big stats, and with a relatively low points cost, there's no time like the present to start a new World Eater's horde. While converting entire squads of Khorne Berzerkers may sound expensive and time consuming, through the use of cheap and widely available parts, it is entirely possible to make whole squads in a short space of time. Keeping the amount of parts swapped out as low as possible, converting a single Khorne Berzerker in this scheme is only slightly more difficult than assembling a regular Chaos Space Marine. The same cannot be said of the other Chaos Legion in desperate need of retrofitting, the Emperor's Children. Pinning a chainaxe to an arm is a simple task when compared to scratch building a sonic blaster or 6. All the parts we have used in this conversion are commonly available and cheap to acquire. If you own a Chaos Space Marines army, you might very well have everything you need for this conversion sitting in your bits box. Chainaxes are the most critical resource to this conversion. While there are some truly excellent third-party chainaxes out there, in order to further push down the cost per each bunny-eared head, we decided to pilfer the chainaxes of the previous generation of Berzerkers. While the old models might suffer some scale issues, the chainaxes are still fully functional chainaxes, in a manner of speaking. Despite their age, they've retained plenty of their original charm. As for the bodies of our Khorne Berzerkers, we'll be looking to the inexpensive start collecting Chaos Space Marines kit. Don't let the fact that these models are monopose put you off. With a little creativity, you will soon be on your way to leading your very own, fully customised Khorne Berzerker horde. We will be using the body of the autocannon wielding Chaos Space Marine from the start collecting kit as a starting point for this Berzerker. First, we remove the right shoulder with a quick flat cut from our trusty pair of plastic snips. While some of the monopost models will have their shoulders or their shoulder pads attached to their torsos when they first come off the sprue, most seem to have these square pins attached to their shoulders. These pins are quite satisfying to obliterate with a pair of plastic snippers, and prove to be much less hassle than removing the entire shoulder. With the shoulder sockets now revealed, we quickly file down the rough edges so that a Khorne Berzerker's arms will have a chance of staying put. Once the shoulder sockets are smooth and ready, we can begin the task of finding the correct arms for this particular Berzerker. We assembled a pile of arms taken from 3 Chaos Space Marine kits: the Chaos Space Marines box set, the Start Collecting kit, and the Chaos Raptors kit. These are all great sources of parts when you are looking for a pile of chainsword wielding arms. Although we will be using the chain axes from the old kit, we're not going to use the arms they come attached to, as the axes had the irritating habit of breaking away from where they attach to the hands. While the axes have retained some of their original charm, the arms supplied with the old Berzerker kit have not weathered the decades quite so well. While the mark of Khorne's shoulder pads might still pass despite their smaller scale, much to our horror, we discovered that the fingers on his hands are all the same length. Before we can remove the chainsword from the hand, we will need to remove the handguard. To do this, we make a cut where the handguard meets the pommel. We repeat this step where the handguard meets the chainsword. Chuck the remnants of the handguard in with your basing bits and move on to removing this weird nub from the chainsword. The nub overhangs slightly onto the thumb, so try to avoid inadvertently cutting off any of his digits. Once the nub is clear, make a straight cut between the hand and the chainsword. With the hand finally free of its plastic constraints, we will now be equipping it with a chainaxe. To prep the axe head for pinning, we will need to make an accurate cut into the centre of the handle. This will provide a starting point from where we can begin drilling into the axe's shaft with our pin vise. The plastic on this axe shaft is ancient and somewhat brittle. Because of this, I take my time to keep the bit straight as possible, ensuring that the pin will have a decent mooring. I drilled out a pit about 3 to 4 mm deep, as drilling any deeper may have caused the plastic to strain and split. Apply some superglue to a straight length of paperclip. Carefully insert this jury-rigged pinning material into the pit you just drilled out, making sure to evenly distribute the superglue on the inside of the axe shaft. The excess length on the pin is snipped away, leaving us with our prepped chainaxe head. Checking the pin against the hand easily reveals to us the precise spot where we should begin drilling. For the chainaxe to sit straight, use your scalpel to score out a hole for the pin vise, and make sure to drill straight into the handle that the hand is gripping. Attach the chainaxe to what was once the chainsword hand to form the complete right hand. Using some more of your preferred adhesive on the inside of the right arm, we can then mount this arm onto our prepped Heretic Astartes torso. Seeing as the body of our Chaos Space Marine is in a fairly looming stance, I decided to go for the universally recognised come at me bro sort of pose. If you wanted to make his pose more manic, it is easy to make a clean cut behind the model's gauntlets, allowing the forearms to be rotated into a more dynamic pose. Before we can really commit to a final pose for our Berzerkers, we are going to have to decide upon which variety of heads to choose from. The most easily available heads that I could find were a pile of Mark II World Eaters veteran helmets I had going spare in my bits box. A pack of 10 of these heads cost £13 on Forge World. At £1.30 per head, they are cheaper than any Berserker helmet proxies that you can find on bit sites. Relying on bit sites for your parts can be frustrating, as the one part you need is always guaranteed to be out of stock. While not quite as ornate as the Blood Crusher helmets, the Mark IIs check all the boxes when it comes to Berserker hats, being big and loud but still streamlined enough so they don't look out of place on current edition Heretic Astartes. Before we mount the left arm on the torso, we will need to clear any remnants from the plastic pin we removed earlier. Make sure the surfaces you mean to glue are free from plastic dust, then glue on a chainsaw arm to complete your Khorne Berzerkers weapon loadout. Now that both of the arms are attached, we can move on to positioning our Khorne Berzerker's head. Once I found the best pose for the head, I applied a small amount of super glue onto a cocktail stick. Carefully place the glue into the neck hole, taking care not to place any excess glue around the top of the shoulders. Place the head in the hole. Now you can permanently position the head into its badass pose and marvel as the overall look of your finished model starts to take shape. Next, it's time to affix the shoulder pad. For this conversion, I have chosen to use a plain shoulder pad from the Chaos Space Marine kit to keep down costs. Apply far too much glue to the back of the shoulder pad and place this onto the Chaos Space Marine shoulder. While this is usually a fairly simple task, the shape of the helmet gives you little clearance to work with, and in some poses, the bunny ears just simply get in the way. You may have to spend a minute wiggling the parts around to get them into place. At this point in time, we notice the fact that our Berserker can't turn his head without his helmet colliding with the rim of his shoulder pad. Sometimes being practical and looking cool are two different things. Now it's time to glue on the backpack, but I'm going to assume that you know how to do this already. And with that, the Berserker is now mostly complete. For the final step, we check the model for any finishing touches that may need our attention. This particular model was originally meant to be equipped with an autocannon, so there is a gap on his torso where the weapon would normally slot in. We fixed this little detail by adding battle damage to the area where the detail abruptly vanishes. Get your scalpel and rough up the area around the sharp edge of the missing detail. Simply drag the scalpel over the area until the edges have been smoothed and it looks adequately blast damaged. With our Khorne Berzerker complete and ready to paint, we can now move on to the mandatory spinny footage. For our Khornate forces, we chose a rich but weathered colour scheme, relying heavily on dry brushing and washes so that it looks both effective and is also surprisingly quick to complete. We started with the classic red and gold coloration of the World Eaters and then proceeded to violently attack it with a wire brush. The result is a battered, weathered appearance, as to better depict the constant warlike nature of the World Eaters. After finishing the first Berserker, you're now on your way to building a full squad of the most maniacal followers of Khorne. Using models from the Start Collecting kit or even a box of regular Chaos Space Marines, repeat until you reach the amount of Berserkers needed to fill the ranks of your Chaos forces. Each Chaos Space Marine in Games Workshop's kits come with slightly different stances and kit variations. Use this to your advantage while making your Berserkers and you will end up with quite a characterful and varied squad while achieving an overall manic look to your Khornate hordes. Don't forget to add an aspiring champion and an icon bearer. These can easily be customised by swapping out or adding a few parts where needed. As you can see, this conversion can be used just as easily with other models as a base. This Berserker is made using the same techniques as shown in the video, but is constructed with more of a classic running Berserker style pose because of the starting model stance. By picking and mixing different bodies with different arm positions, you can cut and paste this technique to effortlessly make the same body into vastly different looking models. If you are looking for an alternative option to cutting apart chainsword arms to convert the chain axes, then Chaos Warrior weapon arms from the Age of Sigmar range can do as an alternative. Simply cut off the weapon's head and replace with a chain axe. Just make sure the shaft is not too wooden looking, as it still has to look like it belongs in the 41st millennium. Some models are much easier to convert than others. This guy, for example, needs hardly any modification, as he comes off the sprue equipped with a fancy looking chain axe in his hand. Just add a chainsword arm, a head and a backpack, and you've got yourself a fully converted Berserker. While his unique chain axe makes him a good candidate for an aspiring champion, we have chosen to spend a few more points to equip our champion with a power fist for some extra bite. This champion belonged to our second squad of 8 Khorne Berzerkers. 3.5 was our first codex way back in 2006. Since then, we've held on to using the old sacred numbers. I only wish they still came with the same points buff. If you have a squad of Khorne Berzerkers, then you will most likely want to also recruit an icon bearer to give your Khorne Berzerkers an extra advantage in the field. The goal of this conversion was to make Khorne Berzerkers that would be on par with current edition Chaos kits and would still look good alongside any new Berzerkers Games Workshop releases in the future. Considering just how wicked these Khorne Berzerkers look alongside the new Khan the Betrayer, I doubt that they would look out of place next to a new Khorne Berzerker kit whenever they happen to be released in the future. This has been Warpsong Games. We hope you found this video interesting. Like and subscribe for more videos in the future, and leave us a comment about any ideas for new videos.